So welcome back to the show, Amitay. I'm so glad to have you again.
I am happy and excited to be back. Last time was absolutely so much fun, and that's great to be here again.
I know time flew so quickly, and
Yeah,
there were so many more things we wanted to talk about. So we decided to
correct.
do a part two. Yeah, and I know the first thing you're such an expert in so many areas, and you've developed things and created things based on these areas of expertise. So I wanted to do a deeper dive on NAD plus and NAD and how it works in the body and why it's so essential and so important.
Okay, so the first thing that we got to realize is that NAD is something that has been learned, that has been taught, in universities as far as physiology for, the last few decades. It was discovered in 1902, so it's not a new molecule. That's, I think, important to understand, because sometimes when we look at, you know, kind of the next big thing in anti-aging or fad in anti-aging, it seems like it came out of nowhere. And at
Hmm.
least if it's substantiated, if it's something um, that holds water, it should have some breadcrumbs as far as our discoveries and how our body works in general. It's got to connect. So NAD definitely connects as far as previous information that we had, and more discoveries about the function of NAD in the body lead us to a holistic understanding of its benefit as a molecule, its importance, and also what happens when it declines with age, which is kind of why we're interested in it. Because if it was something that was just maintained in a regular levels in the body, throughout our life, I don't think that would be such an interesting molecule to look at as far as supporting it, right?
Right. So yeah, the fact that it does decline over time with age, um, makes it important to try to maintain those high levels of NAD. But what do we know actually? There's so much talk about NAD and lots of proponents of supplementation with the
Yes.
precursors. But really, when we break it down, what does NAD actually do in the body that we know about? Like, what are some of the functions that we currently know about, and why is it even so important?
So I think it's nice to start where my last sentence kind of ended, and look at what's going to happen if we magically took NAD out of someone's body, and that person would be dead in 30 seconds. So NAD actually supports it's involved in between 500 to 600 processes in the body, but we're not going to look at them. We're going to look at maybe at the meta. We're going to look above and see what's unique about it. So the first thing that's unique about it is how it acts within our mitochondria. So I bet most people, when they hear the word mitochondria, they can, if you wake them up at night, they would complete the sentence, the powerhouse of the cell, right?
Yes.
That, that everyone kind of learned, and it is the powerhouse of the cell, and in each cell we have a few of them, and they basically are what converts the food that we eat to energy that then our cells can use. And what facilitates this conversion is NAD. So the first thing that is very important is to understand that this is a monumental molecule as far as maintaining the correct function of energy creation in every cell in our body. And that is something that we have known for a long time. And through researching the last 2 3 decades, mainly 2 decades, um, we have uncovered more mechanisms that rely on NAD. And maybe the most important added mechanism that has been discovered is its role in DNA maintenance and repair. And that's I think is a pretty cool mechanism, because in every cell in our body we have basically a full recipe of what it is to be Jen Haley or Amitai Eshel, or each and every one of us. What it is a recipe. So when our cells kind of are generated as stem cells, they have the potential to be any cell. Why? Because the DNA is completely, readable. And then when they travel through their basically their coding, their creation into a singular function cell or single orientation cell, such as a skin cell, a heart cell, liver cell, etc., it doesn't lose that information. But this information gets shut down as far as the readability of it, as far as the DNA is concerned. And the only readable parts are the parts that tell the cell how to behave like a liver cell, for that example. And something very interesting happens when we grow older, and so that something is called epigenetics. So how our genes are being, you know, um, basically how they're being
Turned on or turned off, like
how they're being
expressed.
exactly. So thank you. So what happens when we grow older is that this recipe of what a liver cell needs to do and be gets kind of jumbled up. Sequences which are supposed to be off, sequences that tell the cell how to be a heart cell, suddenly some of them, a very small amount, yeah, they turn on. And the correct sequences that tell our liver cell how to be a liver cell turn off. And the cell becomes an incomplete, as far as function, cell, and complications happen. For example, inflammation and many other things. So it can't really kind of do its functions correctly. And the maintenance, the ability to maintain the correct DNA function, which governs how our cell behaves, therefore governs how we age,
Mhm.
depends on NAD. It's
That
almost like, the best analogy I've heard is that the factories that are responsible to create this maintenance, they need raw materials, right? They're not going to basically function without raw material. And NAD is that raw material. So that is why there is this duality of, NAD as this waiter of electrons in your mitochondria that carries electron from place to place and facilitates energy creation, but also the dependence of it in many, many, many different pathways. And we can talk, it maintains neuronal health. There is even some research looking at it as an actual neural transmitter,
okay.
and that is kind of early as far as research goes. But that's kind of the basis of how it behaves in the body.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, we focus a lot on mitochondria, but what I hear you saying is that even if your mitochondria are, you know, healthy per se, you're not going to be able to convert the energy within the mitochondria if you don't have a sufficient amount of NAD in your cells. And that naturally deteriorates over time with age. So, in order to biohack or use the body to its greatest advantage, the goal here is really to increase the amount of NAD in the body. And then with that being said, it also helps with DNA maintenance and repair, which we know is breaking down every day, from environmental toxins to metabolism to just being alive and having cells replicate. So it's so empowering. I love the fields of epigenetics because when I went to medical school, I was taught that your genes controlled your destiny and you were just, a victim of your genes, right? And it's completely not like that at all. And what I hear you say is that if you're able to maintain adequate amounts of NAD plus in the body, then you can live the life and make good choices and actually have your genes benefit you to the maximum amount because of the NAD being a good facilitator and even a messenger in all of these processes in the body. It's almost like a signaling molecule in many capacities. Is that
Well,
true?
well, it is, and some processes in some processes it actually is a signaling molecule. So
Hmm.
there's gonna be a reference to the amount of NAD available in the process, especially PARPs who are, repair mechanisms, as far as DNA is concerned. They're going to actually, turn on and off according to NAD levels available. So it is actually partly a signaling molecule. And that's what's very interesting. It's really multifaceted, and it is really at the core of a lot of processes in the body. And what's interesting is that where it's getting a lot of notoriety is in addiction treatment, as far as alcohol, food, and opiates.
Wow. How does that work?
So I can tell you, first of all, the person I've learned the most from, and we have been working for a while, you know, to find a way to do some research together, is Dr. Mattier, and they make an IV of NAD. They're out of Louisiana, out of
Okay.
Louisiana. They have an addiction center, very, very famous and popular one. And they make an IV that's called BR-NAD. And what's interesting is NAD it does a lot of things as far as addiction treatment. You know, they dramatically lower cravings. They also reset the sensitivity. So what happens with opiates is that they actually, over time, they increase the pain that someone's feeling. So they lower the pain threshold. And what
Wow.
NAD can do, also from a DNA point of view, but also as far as direct mechanisms in the cell, so directly happening from the fact that there's more NAD, the nerves kind of reset and they relay information more correctly as far as pain is concerned. So that's actually a very, very, very successful and popular at the moment treatment, NAD IVs
Mm.
for addiction.
So besides IV, and how often would the IVs need to be done? Like, I always wonder, okay, so I know we touched on it in the last podcast. Like, what are some natural ways to boost NAD? And then can we do a deeper dive into the supplements and how to get NAD into the body through precursors or IV, or what are the most effective ways? Because I know a lot of times people hear, oh, NAD, I'm going to take an NAD supplement, and it's not going to do anything because it's not getting to where it needs to be this great facilitator and signaling molecule, and help convert the energy that it needs to do in the mitochondria. So how do we maintain or increase our NAD levels over time as we age, or even optimize them in young athletes, right? Everyone wants to
Correct,
optimize it.
correct,
Is there ever
correct.
too much, you know?
I'm gonna answer that in a second, because it's not about too much, it's about byproduct.
Okay.
But first of all, yeah, you're right, and you've mentioned it a few times. So I just want to give a number to it. So between the age of 30 to 60, 40 to 50% of the NAD that we have in our body is going to decline. So we're going to
Mm.
have half of the NAD available to us as far as our cells are concerned. And it is important, if we want, to fight aging as much as possible, to maintain high levels of NAD. So as far as supplementations are concerned, NAD, your body needs to synthesize NAD. So it does it through a pathway that recycles it. So every time NAD is being used, nicotinamide is being created, and that's why I wanted to tell you about too much NAD. So if we just would take NAD as a supplement, as a full molecule, the body doesn't know necessarily what to do with it immediately. It needs
Mm.
to kind of translate it. It says, okay, I see here a complete process. That's obviously not what the body's doing, but I want to imbue some sense into it. So the body basically looks at it and says, well, I really need to kind of backtrack and see how I built this molecule. So it kind of breaks it down to its precursor, but mainly nicotinamide, and then rebuilds it into NAD when it's already in the cell. So outside of the cell, it's not that great of a system to increase NAD, because your body really needs to kind of reverse engineer what happened there. And because nicotinamide is a byproduct, all of these processes that we actually want NAD to work for, enzymes that repair DNA and increase our, mainly enzymes that repair DNA, and that maintenance of youth is being actually shut down when we have too much nicotinamide. So
Mm.
nicotinamide, as far as supplementation, or NAD as far as supplementation, isn't optimal. Uh,
That's
we-
interesting because in the dermatology literature, we often will recommend nicotinamide 500 milligrams twice a day because it reduces new non-melanoma skin cancers like basal cell cancer or squamous cell cancers in patients that are predisposed to taking them. And I'll often recommend it for patients for acne because of its anti-inflammatory. But I think what I hear you saying is that's not even too high of a dose.
exactly. Actually, that's what I wanted to tell you. As far as we're talking, what I love about America, but also can be dangerous,
More is
is
not better.
exactly is the sense that if a little is good, then a little more is better. So as far as 500 milligrams twice a day, that is great. That's definitely a good amount. Bear in mind, a lot of people are going to consume other sources of vitamin B3. So they're going to eat red meat, and they're maybe going to take like a vitamin B complex. So we really do want to be cognizant as far as the real amount of that form of vitamin B3 that we're ingesting.
Very good. That's important for people to hear that more is not better. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
Now,
nicotinamide is created when the NAD is recycled, and that can cause a downgrade, is basically what you're saying. So we don't want to overdo that.
yeah, that's one pathway that the body's utilizing all the time. So it's going to turn it on and off, depends on uh, how much NAD has been used, and a few other interrelated processes. That's not a perfect mechanism, because that's the mechanism of turning it on or shutting it off isn't isn't completely medically available. It's hard for us to kind of affect with medication or supplementation. So that's off the table as far as correct supplementation. What is very and just as a kind of FYI, another form of NAD precursor is tryptophan.
Oh,
A
okay.
lot of people are associating with mental health and serotonin and things like that. So tryptophan is a precursor to NAD, but really what we want to look at are the upper echelon of precursors, things that really the body immediately knows what to do with them, knows that it needs to get them into the cell and produce NAD out of them. And these are NR and NMN, which are nicotinamide riboside and nicotinamide mononucleotide.
And
Both
where
of them,
can people get those?
these are available through supplementation.
Hmm.
So you can go online, one company that's very famous as far as NR, and they also own a patent as far as NR is concerned in a pill form, are True Niagen.
Yeah.
That's one company. So that's definitely a good company to go with as far as safety standards and research. As far as NMN, you can look at a company called Do Not Age.
Okay. Yeah.
They're great. Another company is Novos, which I've kind of mentioned before. They're a small
Mhm.
company. They have a few anti-aging solutions that are very interesting, and they have a good science backing. So that's as far as supplementation. The problem with supplementation is your digestive tract, number one. The second is your liver. So the problem is that when you trace the NR or NMN that people supplement, and you check how much of that really got converted directly into NAD, and how much of it got basically recycled through the recycling pathway, which we already stated not really what we want to do. We find that in muscle and brain tissue, it's really the recycling pathway that's more dominant. And in your liver, we can see more of that precursor being directly translated into NAD. So a lot of people are opting for NAD IVs. The problem is, again, if we're doing just an IV of NAD, that's still that complete molecule that the body needs then to break down. It doesn't go through your liver, but these are not complete processes. And by the way, the project that I've been involved in most intensely in the last few years are are different types of delivery methods of NAD precursors, which are NR or NMN. So I started a company around 3 years ago, which is called Young Goose, and we're using a patented form of NAD precursors, mainly NMN and NR, which is called NR Noble. And that is right now available as a skin anti-aging cream. And in the future, we're looking at different applications of it as well. But right now, it's something that someone can use once a day and increase their, skins, mainly their facial skins, NAD levels directly by applying the cream. So there are many different kind of modalities being developed or just coming out as far as increasing NAD specifically in a specific tissue.
Yeah, I mean, this is a super elegant and innovative skincare line. I love it. So at the level of the skin, so it has NMN and NR in it. So you have both precursor forms that I know there's currently a lot of debate as to which one is the better form. So you have both of them in there. And are
Yes,
you focusing on the DNA maintenance and repair mechanism for skin, or what's the mechanism, and how does it work at the level of nourishing the skin from the outside in as opposed to from the inside out as we would do with supplements or IV?
that's why I love your question. That kind of shows that you are someone who is educated as far as the biology of the skin, because that is the question we asked ourselves. So we're making a cream, so we have a base that's a moisturizer, and we have you know precursors that would increase NAD levels. Now we can support this process with different molecules. So how do we do that? And what mechanism do we target? And we actually target both. And we actually also piggyback on another mechanism. So I'm going to talk about it in a second. But the first thing that we're doing is we're using another patent that's called enhanced resveratrol. So
Mm.
resveratrol, gained notoriety a few years ago. And that is actually, you can look at it, if NAD is the fuel for these DNA repair processes, resveratrol is kind of the acceleration pedal. So it really stimulates these DNA repair mechanisms, and also is an amazing antioxidant and a few other things that it does. But let's focus for a second on its DNA repair stimulation. So the a little bit about resveratrol as far as skin is concerned. That's also a molecule that's very difficult to formulate well for skincare. The reason we use a patented form of it that's called enhanced resveratrol is that this is a fermented form that breaks down resveratrol into a more usable form that's 50 times more effective.
Hmm.
That is as far as supporting the mechanism of DNA repair. And as far as supporting mitochondrial function, we have CoQ10, PQQ, and turmeric, which is anti-inflammatory, which also supports mitochondrial function in order to support kind of both of these systems. What we also have, NAD also affects autophagy. Autophagy is something that we look at when we look at intermittent fasting or um, hyperbaric chamber, a few hormetic, a few stressors, positive stressors, which is the body's way of recycling its damaged cells. So it does it kind of cleans house kind of, and uses these materials to repair cells and to create new cells. And because NAD supports autophagy, we also have combined into our cream
Mm.
astragalus, in astragalus extract, which promotes autophagy as well, and goes after
Telomerase, yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, it helps with telomerase activation, like the supplement TA65. Okay.
Exactly.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, that's really great. I love how you said that NAD is the fuel and resveratrol is the pedal. Um, and
Yeah.
then NAD helps with autophagy. So that's great because if you have NAD actually getting inside, if you have NAD actually helping autophagy and mitophagy and killing off the
Mhm.
zombie mitochondria, and then it's also has a high presence within the cell, the mitochondria that are still there that are going to be that much more effective in energy production. Um, yeah,
Yeah. Not only that, there is study looking at and showing how with proper maintenance of NAD levels, you're also maintaining higher levels of mitochondria. So as I mentioned in the beginning, there is more than one mitochondrion per cell, and by increasing NAD levels, we are also eventually increasing the amount of mitochondria in a cell. So yeah,
effective mitochondria, not the zombie mitochondria, those we
correct.
want to go away. Okay, so well, that's great, and I know you're offering the listeners a really nice discount. So we'll have that discount code with the link in the show notes. I think it's
Correct.
Radiance.
Yeah, Radiance is the discount, and it's a 30%
Oh,
off
that's
discount
all.
for
Wow, thank you.
the listeners of the show. And our mission is bigger than this one product. The idea is that we're going to use the income generated and the awareness generated um, from this product to push the envelope more and more and more. Our mission is really to target the source of aging as far as skin aging is concerned, and create the most far-reaching products as far as skincare. And we're very excited. We have around five to seven products that in our pipeline already.
Yeah. And it's nice. It's very streamlined. A lot of lines have like 4 or 5 steps in the morning and 4 or 5 steps at night, and I find that it's not necessary, and it's very elegant formulation, and it's different from anything else out there because we've been dealing with exfoliation and anti-acne and vitamin C's and retinols and things like that, and this is just a completely different type of product. So it's just nice to have something else in our armamentarium or whatever you want to call it, and to actually work at a different level where we haven't been able to tap into before. So thank you. That's a great discount. I'll make sure I include that in the show notes.
My
Um,
pleasure.
yeah, I'm loving the products myself. So I want to go back though to what you were saying with the oral versions of the NR and the NMN. Do you have any is there a consensus on which one is the best, or it just goes back and forth? Because I get convinced one is better than the other one is better, and I don't really have I end up rotating, to be honest with you, for my
Yeah, and
supplementation.
so I think it's going to make a lot of sense if I'm going to explain a little bit the background. So NAD, something that I've been asked a lot is, can we test our own NAD levels? Can someone send their blood sample to a lab and test their NAD levels? And the reason this is very difficult is because NAD is very unstable. Okay, so by the time it gets to the lab, unless you're doing it under very specific conditions, again, Dr. Mattier from Springfield, Louisiana, is heading research in that area, and it's a roundabout way to say there is a trick in NAD supplementation production. There is something that's going on there that can be patented, which relates to stability.
Okay.
So NR isn't very stable, and the stabilizing compound that's called so there are a few actually, but the true Niagen is the most famous patented product there is it has a financial interest behind it. So that's important to recognize. NMN as well has not as a supplementation form, but Harvard University has research behind it, and a few professors there have startups in the field that look at different utilization of NMN. So there are financial interests in both sides. And when we're looking at research that goes back and forth, that mainly is motivated by that.
Mhm.
Both of them look great. Both of them look, as effectively raising NAD levels in our body, in our blood, not perfect, but better than not taking supplementation. Another form that I just would like to mention is nicotinic acid or niacin that causes flushing. And that, I do in the evening because that's, I don't want to flush and be outside. So if someone can take 500 milligrams of that at night, that would also get transformed into NAD, and that is another good way to elevate NAD levels.
That's
And
cheaper too. Yeah, that's cheaper
yeah,
too. But I'm naturally flush, so I can't tolerate niacin at all. So
exactly.
it's a very personal thing if someone can tolerate it or not.
Yes, and let's not forget lifestyle, um, choices or different things that we can do to raise NAD levels, and
Such
that is
as, yeah.
that's part of what we're talking about today. So, we're going to be talking about cryo and sauna and in red light therapy that doesn't really raise NAD, but it does interact with it. As far as different things that you can do. First of all, is exercise.
High
So
intensity.
exactly.
Okay.
So when we do high intensity interval training, we effectively create stress on the body that leads to a raise in NAD levels. It does many different positive effects on our body, but one of them is raising and maintaining high NAD levels. Another thing that we can do as far as positive stress is lower our calorie intake. So as far as caloric restriction is concerned, so we can eat less, like 30% less than our daily recommended caloric intake, and that's going to increase NAD. Obviously, we don't want to do it every day unless we're trying to lose weight. But if we want to do it for NAD reasons, that's not something you're going to do every day. But as far as as a supplementary process, you could definitely do that.
Like
As far
a cyclic caloric restriction,
correct,
basically. Okay. Are you
correct.
talking about intermittent fasting or just reducing your calories like 6 days a week and having a feeding day? Or is there any research one better than the other?
Yes. So there isn't research of one better than the other. But what I wanted to say is if we did want to make a habit into it, we could look at two ways. The first way is a more standard, I guess you could say now, because it's more popular type of intermittent fasting, which is called time restricted eating, which
Mhm.
means that we're going to be eating at a window of around 8 hours if we want any higher NAD levels, around 10 to 8 hours, and then fast or not eat. And that's I'm saying on purpose fast because we can't have any calories. We can't have liquid calories, sugar in our coffee, whatever that would be, lipid-based supplements. You don't want to have any calories for at least 14 hours, 16 hours are better. And
So you're talking like don't even do bulletproof coffee, basically.
yeah,
Okay.
for NAD levels, definitely we want good fasting.
Yeah.
Uh,
But you can have water, so not dry
yeah,
fast, but
you could have
just
water. You could have no calories, so you can have tea or coffee,
mhm.
but
I
not
don't
bullet.
find it's not really that hard to do. I mean, if you stop eating 2 or 3 hours before you go to sleep and then you wake up and you get a good workout in, it's that time has already passed. I don't really find that to be too difficult to do.
Correct. But I would like to remark, especially Jen, the reason I'm a big fan is because you always you zoom out and you look at the entire body function, right? You're looking at a holistic approach always to every small step we make. So if we zoom out a little bit, um, we another thing that supports healthy levels of NAD is a healthy circadian rhythm.
Mm.
Therefore, when we look at the window or the time frame of feeding, we want it to be supportive of a good circadian rhythm. which means we don't want to eat too close to bedtime. So yeah, 3-4 hours before we go to bed. Because, for example, I finish training around 8:30. I don't eat. I mean, if I wanted to have dinner, it means that I'm going to have dinner around 9, and
Yeah.
that's very difficult if I want to weave it into some circadian rhythm supporting eating pattern. So just take it into account. Okay, that's another thing that you want to throw in there as far as supporting NAD levels. Supplementation on omega-3 fatty acids.
What
So one of the
dosage?
you really want to have over 1 gram.
Yeah, I usually recommend 2,000 for adults,
Yes.
2,000 milligrams, and then 1,000 for kids. Okay.
Yes, I take around 6 grams a day.
Yeah. Which is fine, but if you're having a procedure, I know this from working in the office. If I do a procedure on someone, they will bruise and bleed
Yes.
because it is a blood thinner, which is one of the benefits. But take into account if you are going to have some sort of elective procedure or have something happen, you're going to be bleeding more or having a
Yes, and you're
difficult
going to
time
be bruising
clotting.
more. Yes, again, and you're going to be bruising more, and take it into account, but definitely more than 1 gram. Probably 1 gram a few times a day, like once or twice a day, even 3
Okay.
times a day would be the right approach.
Do you like having, do you recommend people take the omega-3 fatty acids with resveratrol and the NAD? Because I know resveratrol is absorbed better with fat. So, is there a best way to take these things?
So NAD, I would definitely, if there is one time a day that you would take NAD, you want to take it. It's better if you take it at night because NAD peaks 8 hours after you have supplemented with a precursor of it.
Okay,
So
that's a really good point. I have never heard anyone make. So it
yes,
peaks 8 hours later. And I know, Dr. David Sinclair's work, he talks about 1 gram a day. Sometimes that's cost prohibitive, obviously, because I think like the true Niagen comes in 200 milligrams. So to take 5 of those, it can get kind of expensive.
so part of the reason I recommended Do Not Age as a company is the fact that you can buy it in bulk,
Okay.
and you're going to see more and more of it since really true Niagen you can get either in 300s or I think in even 500s. It's called like a pro, and you can get it from, I think that's their kind of way for them to collaborate with doctors.
Yeah, you
Uh,
know what? You're right. It is 300. I'm thinking of, I had one compounded from TaylorMade Health that was in NMN, and that was 200s. Yeah. Okay. So, but I'm thinking 5 a day, this 30 capsule bottle is going to be gone in no time, and it's not inexpensive.
yeah,
Okay. So do not age, you can do in bulk. And I mean, so taking that at night, and then are you recommending resveratrol and omega-3 fatty acids at night or morning, or it doesn't really matter, or it depends on when you're eating?
it does depend when you're eating. As far as resveratrol and omega-3, resveratrol does have better absorption when you take it with uh, with 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 lipids. So definitely that's a good combination. I would like to say something about NMN. I don't know, some people it's important for them, and definitely not for me. But mm, all the NMN supplements I am aware of in the United States are being compounded in China and then being imported to the US,
Mm,
where NR is being compounded locally.
okay.
I'm talking about supplements. I'm not talking about IVs or injections or anything like that. So if it's important to someone, it's that's the
Be
case.
aware. Yeah. So, okay. So you just said injection. So can NAD be injected like as an intramuscular or subcutaneous injection?
Yes, but it's not. Okay, so normally it's in an IV
Hmm.
because there flushing does occur when you take NAD, intravenously. Again, it's being broken down, so some of that's going to make you flush. The difference with an injection, it's called push IV, and what you're doing basically is that you're doing it much faster. The problem with that is that's really, so someone like you that flushes easily and can't really tolerate it, that's going to be an issue. But the flip side of it is, if you want to do it slowly, that's an 8-hour process. So
Mm,
the IV is definitely something that it's expensive. That's the most expensive form. That's the slowest form, but it does show great benefits. And that is why, if you look at who's doing it, a lot of the people that are doing it are going to be either people who are seriously into anti-aging and dedicated, major amounts of their day to it. People who are in a facility where they're being nursed because of something, and then
like
it's all
addictions.
exactly, exactly, or people who are doing it either for athletic performance or once in a while as maintenance or anything like that, which it could do.
Okay, so how often are people doing it? Obviously, it depends on the reason, but I mean, if someone is doing it for longevity or for athletic performance, not addiction, which I would assume would be more frequently, is this a once a week thing, a once a month, every day? I mean, what's the protocol? Because I mean, I've had those IVs before, and it's not fun to get stuck frequently.
No, and there is no real one protocol. That's something that
Yeah,
your body relies on. Around 2 grams a day,
yeah.
that's what your body needs. And obviously that's why it recycles out of it, because we just went over supplementation and how costly it is, how hard it is to supplement on these kind of grams.
Hmm.
So definitely it relies a lot on recycling, but um, when you can replenish those reservoirs, that's definitely positive. So doing it once a week sounds to me like an endeavor that's going to cost a lot. You're looking at probably around $80 per injection.
Hmm. But then it
That's
sounds like it depends on what you do in between. Like if you're doing high intensity interval training and you're doing
definitely
some, time restricted eating or caloric restriction and,
keto.
you know,
Keto can help.
keto.
Yeah, keto. So we can talk about cryo a little bit.
Yeah.
Hyperbaric chamber.
Okay. How does
Um,
hyperbaric chamber work with that?
very interesting. So that is another hormetic process that stresses the body in a positive way and causes an elevation in NAD levels, especially in the brain and muscle.
Yeah, I know it's great for the brain, and
Yes.
folks with traumatic brain injuries and after doing intense neurofeedback, it helps develop those new
Yeah.
neuroplasticity and new neural pathways.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I usually do hyperbaric when I go up to Park City because of the elevation. I'll jump in for a day.
Really.
Um, but after this conversation, I'm thinking I need to do it more frequently. It's not hard to find. They cost maybe 100 $150 to do one, and they're often at chiropractors' offices or some functional medicine offices and things like that. So that's good to know. So cryo and then hyperbaric. Can you talk a little bit about cryo and hormesis and sauna? I know we wanted to talk about that a little bit as well and
Yeah.
how that interrelates in all of this.
Maybe before we leave the this subject completely, I want to mention light therapy as far as correlation with NAD. So light therapy has, as far as low level laser or red light and near infrared light LEDs, um, that in very high intensity, um, irradiating on our body and what that does to us. That has been another something I've been fascinated with and invested a lot of money and time into, and has benefited me greatly personally in the last decade. And one of the major benefits, and I'm going to explain why in a second of light therapy, and I'm talking especially about the red and infrared range, because there is research about blue light and how it lowers inflammation in the skin. So I'm separating that for now. So red and near infrared, what they do is they really dial down the amount of inflammation in a tissue. And higher level of inflammation has been correlated with a decline in NAD. So
Mm,
there is no direct correlation between red light therapy and more NAD. Actually, okay, I'm going to get into it in a second, but because there is no direct correlation, but there is a symbiotic, if you would, or a synergistic effect of these two. Uh, what what happens with light therapy is that the process or the benefits of light therapy, one of them is increase in ATP, which is literally fuel. That's literally the end of the equation of energy creation in our body, or one of the ends of energy creation in the body. And NAD, that's what it does. It facilitates the function in the mitochondria that creates ATP. So
the end result of having a good amount of NAD is that you basically create ATP and you have more fuel, basically.
now what happens? So what happens? So we're talking about the mitochondria. The mitochondria is extremely important. Mitochondria really.
Can you check your mic? Can you check your mic real quick?
Yeah. What? Can you hear me well?
Yeah, that's better. Something was cutting out. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's just important information.
So when we grow older, or we're sick, or we're injured, our mitochondria, the thing that is responsible of utilizing electrons and oxygen to create ATP, creates a byproduct that is called nitric oxide, an amazing molecule in the body, but not in the mitochondria. But because what happens is nitric oxide, if you kind of notice by the word, has an oxygen molecule there. In that oxygen molecule, the mitochondria gets confused and tries to use nitric oxide like it's oxygen.
Wow.
And actually, what happens is that, oxygen tries to get utilized in air quotes, and it comes to the enzyme that uses it and says, I'm here. But the enzyme says, sorry, I can't use you. I already have someone that I'm using. It's nitric oxide. So oxygen, feels betrayed and becomes a free radical and starts wreaking havoc. And that is oxidative stress, which leads to inflammation and eventually cell death. So the more waste we have, the more free radicals we have, the more damage to the mitochondria and less effectiveness of the mitochondria. Therefore, so it's a cascade of processes that leads to inflammation and cell death. What light therapy does, it actually gets absorbed, or it stimulates this enzyme that is supposed to use oxygen and breaks the bond. This enzyme is called CCO, and it breaks the bond between CCO and nitric oxide.
Yeah. Cyclooxygenase, right? CCO.
Yes. No. It's cytochrome C oxidase.
Okay.
And so it breaks the bond and releases nitric oxide from the mitochondria.
Okay.
We're going to get back to the positive results of that. But for now, what happens in the cell is that CCO can now bind to oxygen effectively, and the cell can return to do the job that it was supposed to do, whether it would be fighting infection, creating collagen, just maintaining itself. And that is called homeostasis. So nitric oxide, when it gets released from the mitochondria, it is a vasodilator. So it's a bit, amongst many things that it facilitates. So it brings more blood to the area, it dilates blood vessels in that area and brings more blood, more nutrients, more oxygen to a specific area which we aim light therapy on. So there is a compounding of effects that are positive, and it shuts down a very specific inflammatory pathway that's called NF-kappa beta, which is also called the master switch of inflammation. So it really is an amazing hack, biohack, to communicate with our body and facilitate healing. That's what we're really doing here. We're looking at a mechanism that our body knows what to do with it normally, and we're hijacking it and using it to our advantage in order to better maintain our body.
Yeah, we're really just trying to utilize these things to let our body do what it wants to do in the first place, right? I mean, our body has all the ability. I always used to laugh because patients would come in and say, "You fixed me," and I'm like, "No, I just distracted you while your body healed itself." And that's kind of what we're trying to utilize these. Some people call them hacks, whatever these strategies that are very available to us. I mean, everything is available. High intensity interval training. Do some plyometric exercises. Go for a couple sprints. It's free. It's available. Even jumping jacks, like
Yeah.
1970s Jack LaLanne, right? And then the calorie restriction, keto, omega-3 fatty acids, that should be in everyone's diet. And healthy circadian rhythms really shouldn't it would really never have even been brought up until recently with, our addiction to, the devices. We're really messing up our circadian rhythms quite a bit. So everything you're recommending to boost NAD levels is, within our control. I mean, even things like heat and cold are naturally there for us all the time until we develop these thermostats where we control it how we want, but our body really does need to be a little bit extra cold and a little bit extra hot sometimes. And in the red light, that's really cool how we've been able to single out the red and the infrared. And you mentioned reducing inflammation, but I'm always perplexed, and I know we talked about this on the last episode with red light therapy, because I think of it as I get up in the morning and I do it and it feels like it boosts my energy. But from what you're saying, it really sounds like it's awesome for reducing inflammation for our athletes that listen to the podcast, and, or anyone who has some sort of an area of inflammation that they want to reduce. So what are your thoughts on that?
Not only that, so remember that, in and sometimes that could sound too good to be true when I'm going, oh, by the way, that also does that, and also does that, and also does that. And I would like to suggest a notion that I don't know if someone would be used to looking at, because normally when you're taking a pill, Advil for a headache, or when you're looking at an activity that you are doing in order to improve something as an athlete, like lifting a weight or something like that, that's a very down the line process that we're trying to stimulate. And what's amazing with light therapy and NAD, by the way, and cryotherapy and high intensity interval training, is that we're targeting a process that is high up in a chain of events that leads to outcomes. So it affects a lot of different things. So it affects, for example, inflammation, but it also affects how much energy does my muscle have to use in a second, in a minute, in 30 minutes, etc. So there is, especially a physical therapist doctor in Sweden, and that he does research about it. There is amazing benefits in using light therapy before physical activity to
Mm.
increase ATP, to increase that cellular fuel that we have, and enjoy it while we're working out. So definitely that's something. Ari Witten, which we already mentioned, he has a light
Yeah.
book. It's called Light Therapy, and that's a book that I would recommend if someone really wanted to get into the nitty gritty of light therapy and how do we choose a device. Just to give a few pointers, we have amazing systems on the market such as Juve, platinum LEDs, the red light man, many companies. That's not very difficult to do. Most of them do it off of Chinese models that they just print their label on it. So you really want to look at cost-effective approach to that, or we can choose more expensive devices, such as Saluma, which is a panel that you put over your face, that is normally for estheticians, but because it's such a safe technology, you can buy it as individual, or even something like Perfectio with zero gravity, which is very expensive. That's really meant for professionals, but as far as something way up there, if someone really wanted to invest a few thousands of dollars, that's also available. So from $300 or $200 handheld little red box to an $8,000 device, you can really choose your budget and your belief in that process. And I know we don't have a lot of time.
No, but I wanted to ask you, so as someone who, I mean, clearly anyone who's listening to you knows that you have so much knowledge. So as someone who's developed a skincare line that's really like nothing else. I mean, I know the market and this is a very unique skincare line. What are your thoughts on red light for skin rejuvenation?
Awesome question. Awesome question. And there are many. So it's very important for me to, that's really one of my passions. So I really want to make sure I structure it correctly. Your skin, and Jen, you mentioned it a second ago, your skin knows what to do on its own. And as a proof to that, you don't have wrinkles for the first 20, 25 years of your life, or you have very little of them. And what happens later is glitches, are mistakes that accumulate. Light therapy, the best thing about it is that it really lowers the amount of mistakes your cells make. And it also allows your cells to kind of go back a little bit, look at mistakes that they did and try and fix them, as far as collagen production, as far as melanin distribution, which causes pigmentation, as far as inflammation in the skin. So red light therapy, if used regularly, not as a one-off in a facial that you do once a month,
Hmm.
it's it's better to think of it as a gym for our cells. And
Yeah, I
if we
love
think,
that.
yeah, how often should you be training? Probably 3, 4 times a week. I'm a psycho, so that's why I say probably, because you know you can train every day, right? You're going to have pros and cons, but 3, 4 times a week is a great amount to train, and that's how often light therapy is a, in air quotes, gym for your cells should be utilized. If you're doing it once a month, it's
Yeah.
not going to be effective unless you're looking at something else that you did that is very stimulatory, such as microneedling, such as laser resurfacing, such as a tummy tuck, okay, as far as surgery goes. And now we want to facilitate healing, definitely an intense session of light therapy. So a lot of people, if they had a cosmetic procedure, would do light therapy 3 days post procedure, and then follow up with many treatments to make sure that the skin recovers optimally, to make sure light therapy also aids with lymphatic drainage.
Hmm.
And also, as we said before, it helps with bringing blood to the area. So there are a few mechanisms of healing facilitation that are kind of being combined with light therapy.
Right. Yeah,
We
and
did,
from the anti-aging perspective or the rejuvenation perspective, so you're saying it helps more with like DNA repair, so the collagen doesn't necessarily break down? Because what we don't even really know what causes wrinkles in the dermatology world. We think that the collagen becomes disorganized. If I biopsy a wrinkle, we can't really see the difference between the spot next to it, right? But
yes,
the theory or the current thought process is that, and tell me if you have a different belief, because I like that we come from different areas, because we bring so much to the table. The current belief is, as the matrix and the all of the structure of the dermis of our skin, the collagen, the elastin, the gags, the glycosaminoglycans, like all of the structure becomes disorganized. And when it's disorganized, it's not as pliable. And then when you have a crease, it kind of stays there instead of bouncing back. Like when you're young and your mother says, "Don't make those faces; they'll stay." Like really, they do.
yeah. So first of all, you're correct in the fact that it does it, as far as damage to our DNA or damage that is caused from UV radiation, which turns the collagen to a less pliable collagen. That does help with that. But also, what I was alluding to is when you would do those stimulatory procedures, which would ask your body to rearrange or to deposit collagen, which would ask your body to repair a certain tissue. that is where light therapy, and by the way, NAD as an anti-aging or as a cream or anti-aging method as far as beauty goes, that's where these processes shine. They facilitate proper cellular function. They
Hmm.
make sure that you recover or that your cells perform the homework that you gave them in the optimal amount. Because if you think about it, we all age differently. And the reason we all age differently is how many mistakes our cells did. And what we're really trying to do is, first of all, minimize those mistakes, but also ask the skin or any cell to try and correct some of the mistakes and try to make the cell recognize what the mistakes are. And that is very difficult. That's not something that happens naturally, as you said. And that can happen only when we give the body homework, which would be, any cosmetic procedure that involves, some damage.
Exactly. Yeah. And, with that being said, everything you talked about today is either going to support that process to be optimal or not. Like, we can't just do all of these hacks and then not eat healthy, because if you're having increased blood flow to the skin to help healing, yet you're not having the proper nutrients to actually be delivered to the skin to allow it to heal, it's not going to heal. So, yeah, I love that. I love that multifaceted approach, and all of these little these tips that we've talked about today. And I always feel like time flies so much with you on here. I
Yeah,
love having you so much, and I'm so
yeah,
grateful.
it's mutual, and of course, the major thing that any podcast really should be about is, or should be mentioned always, is inflammation. When we speak about food, when we speak about light therapy, when we speak about, you know, going in an airplane, when we're speaking on whatever that would be, we really always should mention inflammation. And that, just to relate to your to your message about food. And Jen, I wanna, to me, that's a break from my day. My day is very monotonous, and to be able to speak about my passions, it's like you're giving me a small gift.
Oh my gosh. And you're giving the audience a gift. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate the generous discount for your skincare line. I've tried it. I love it. It's a game changer in the industry. And I really am so grateful to know you and have people like you doing this hard work behind the scenes and sharing that information with all of us to make the world a better place. Thank you so much, Amatai.
Jen, you're great. Thank you very much.